Hi, I'm Ashlyn. I just want to give you an idea of what to expect at your first visit at a fertility acupuncture clinic. I still remember my first visit to a fertility clinic. My wife and I had decided we wanted to start a family, and after we navigated the already complicated world of the sperm donor industry, we walked into the fertility clinic for the first time. And I'll never forget it. We walked in and it was this really dreary office with fluorescent lights, and it was a room full of mostly women who were looking down, trying not to make eye contact. And it felt a little bit more like a bus station than a place of hope or even health for that matter. So first of all, I want to let you know that this is not going to be anything like that. We've worked very hard to make our office nothing like that. Obviously, there's a lot to cover at your first visit to an acupuncture fertility clinic. It's a complicated world of emotions and delicate hormonal balance and timing. So there is a lot to cover at this visit, but we're going to have this short video to give you an idea of what to expect. If you're watching this video in our office, hopefully you've already had a tour, and we want you to just feel really at home. So make yourself a cup of tea and relax. Whatever traffic you faced before you got here, or whatever weather was in your way, it's all behind you now. The first part of your visit is going to be educational. Basically, we want to make you the best consumer of fertility acupuncture you can be. I know that when my wife and I were going through this process in the medical clinic, we just felt like a lot was happening to us, and no one really had the time to explain exactly what or why we were doing what we were doing, and it just felt a bit overwhelming. So we want you to understand sort of the framework of how we're thinking about your treatment and what our goals are and what we're trying to do, so that you don't ever feel quite that overwhelmed and in the dark about your health. The next thing is that we want you to understand acupuncture so that you know if it's working. Obviously, bringing home a baby is the ultimate measure of success, but that takes a very long time. And how do we know if we're kind of doing the right things along the way? So what we're going to do is we're going to go over the factors that influence fertility naturally. I have an analogy that I use. It's called the seed and the soil. And what we're basically looking at are what are the components of fertility in both a garden, and then what does that look like as when you're talking about hormonal balance in us. Now, the next thing that we'll look at is the seasonality of your treatment. So even though you can get everything right, you can have great seed quality and great soil quality, but if you plant broccoli in February, you're probably not going to get much. So we're going to talk about sort of the hormonal seasons that we're going through, and I want you to have an idea of what perfection looks like in all of those phases. Once we have a better understanding of what sort of perfect seed quality and soil quality and perfect seasonality looks like, we want to go in and ask you some very targeted questions to give us an idea of kind of where you're at on that continuum. So we'll ask you a lot of questions that have to do with your hormonal cycle to find out what's perfect and what has room for improvement. Those are the things that you're going to use to hold us to our job. So those things that are not perfect should be moving closer and closer to perfect if we're doing things right. And if we're not, we need to make some changes. Okay, after all this sort of makes sense to you, we're just going to talk for a little while. I've made Chinese medicine sound sort of overly mechanistic, but really there's this huge human element, and certainly what makes you influences things just as much as very specific indicators of how your blood or qi or yin or yang are doing. So we're just going to talk, and we're going to find out a little bit more about who you are and how this process has been for you, what kind of support you have, how you're feeling about other areas of your life. Are there other things in your health that could use improvement? Okay, after you feel like we really understand you and what's going on, we'll move on to a physical exam. And this is non-invasive, it's very gentle, and we'll do a Chinese pulse diagnosis where we feel the artery on your wrist. We are looking at beats per minute, but that's not as important as some of the other things that we're looking for, the quality of the artery in different places along your wrists, both wrists. and we'll also do some very gentle palpation in your abdomen to see if there's any tender spots that might give us a little more information. Once we put together sort of the interviewing information along with the physical exam information, we should have a pretty good idea of what the path going forward looks like for you. So what we'll try to do is give you a really good idea of maybe how many treatments you're going to need going forward, if there's any herbs or supplements we would recommend. We'll go through all that at this point. And you can get your first treatment almost always at your first visit. So today, if you're in our office now, every once in a while, it's a little more complicated, the intake, and we just need a little more time. And if that happens, it might be that your first treatment is at our next visit, but usually you get a treatment today. Okay, see you soon.